Hey, welcome to the funniest week of our existence. Thank you, SEC, motherfuckers.
I refuse. I'm not doing it. We're going to talk about literally everything but the SEC. I have taken us on a world tour today of literally every crypto arms race news that is not the SEC, partly because tomorrow we'll probably just say FU to the FEC, to the SEC, to the FEC.
To the FEC. That's kind of been consistent for our FU Fridays. But yeah, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about globally today. It's another awesome update on the crypto arms race. Holy hell, you got loud in my ear all of a sudden.
I was just excited. I'm sorry.
It's so fired up. So what exactly are we talking about? Actually, first, before we get there, it's a show every day, every weekday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, Monday to Friday. Same place, all over all the different socials. YouTube, Spotify,
LinkedIn,
Twitter Spaces,
everywhere.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch. We are everywhere. Anyways, so like, share, subscribe, help share the love, help us get the word out so we can help y'all navigate this space. Okay, done. Go.
You want to know what we're talking about?
Yes.
Literally every nation. Well, that's not true. I'm trying to get something from every continent to cover today. So first of all, we're just going to mention why it's important to talk about other countries, even when stuff is happening in our own country with the SEC. We're going to talk about BRICS because I can't help myself. We're going to talk about Europe really briefly, like it's super fun, good news. And then we're going to move into Latin America. We're going to talk about Argentina. We're going to talk about El Salvador. We might talk about Brazil if we have time. And then we're going to move into Oceania because Bali has done some interesting things and Australia has done almost the exact opposite thing.
Yeah. I'm excited. I have a lot of opinions on this. Quick shout out to our friends at Spectral. I've shown the back of this shirt before, but I'm a big fan. If you're going to make merch tees like this, putting something on the back,
yeah, it's cool.
Big hit. I'm a big fan. So anyways, shout out to Spectral. We'll tag them in the video. Maybe they'll send some more merch because I like their merch. It's good, soft, nicely fitted. Love it. Anyways, let's go.
All righty. Okay, so as we said, we are going to talk about everything but the SEC. And so I should probably start with, why does it matter when the SEC has so much news? Why does the rest of the world matter? Because crypto and specifically DeFi adoption are up pretty well everywhere except North America right now. So whether you're talking about CBDCs or if you're talking about new DEX licenses in Hong Kong, or if we're talking about weird exchanges you've never heard of, or how banks are moving into the Brazilian DeFi, it's everywhere. It's going on. We actually have a wild amount of inflation like across the world that is also driving crypto because people are afraid of their bank and afraid of TradFi. And so the three most major places we're seeing that crypto adoption right now are Turkey, Argentina, and the Philippines. And so we are going to talk about Argentina a little bit later today. JD, are you mad that we're not talking about the SEC?
No, I mean, I still talk about the SEC almost all day because it's kind of where we spend a lot of time currently. But all of that being said, I think it's really important to point out there's been some things that we've covered in a few episodes ago regarding the Euro C. So the Euro coin, Turkey as an example, since that's what's on the headline here, also has the Turkish lira stable coin. Why the hell is this relevant? Because currently getting your assets from some of these countries that are plagued with inflation, Argentina is another great example, many African countries, Philippines, of course, probably the most obvious, Turkey. Inflation has become rampant. Like their currencies are devaluing so fast that there's no way for many of the citizens to hedge. And what happens is these countries prevent transfers out of a lot of their assets because they don't want the contagion to be even greater than it already is. So these stable coins and on-ramps into these different stable coins allows for a very cheap and very efficient near instant settlement FX, foreign exchange, where you can then reduce your exposure to your local currency and go to some version of a safe haven. Now, is the US dollar or the euro, current macroeconomic climate, a safe haven? Probably not. But it's a hell of a lot safer than some of these hyperinflation currencies right now. So, I mean, I think we're seeing there's a lot of reasons why this is interesting. It's also very difficult when your inflation is so high. It doesn't matter what else you do denominated in that currency, you're still ending up losing. And so if you can do even crypto denominated in USD equivalents, at least then your gains are your gains. And when you move it back into your local currency, you only move back into the local currency in the proportion that you need to spend short term. So you're not exposing your assets to crazy inflation. Now, this is really bad in many ways for these host countries because that they're becoming less and less dependent on their fiat currency, which probably exacerbates the problem long term. Having said that, I mean, what are the people supposed to do? Governments make decades of poor decisions. Some cases corruption, some cases just poor decisions. It's
also interesting because people aren't as bullish on the US dollar anymore, right? Like where we've seen sometimes when you travel, you pull out, as a Canadian, you pull out American money so that you can, pay your cab driver and stuff in a variety of countries that are not America. And the reason that this is interesting is we're also seeing a step away from that and a move towards crypto payments while you're traveling. We're going to talk about that later. Are you ready for this world tour?
I can't wait to go to Hong Kong.
We're going to Hong Kong first. This is fascinating because most of the news that you're going to see is about how Hong Kong is setting themselves up to be the primary digital asset space. They want to be the crypto hub. They want to be the crypto entrepreneur hub. We're doing it. We're getting licenses. And you're seeing news article after news article of them granting these licenses. But if you talk to any individuals who happen to be stationed in Hong Kong or who have done business there for some time, they are primarily saying, this isn't as certain as you think. It's kind of a big PR stunt to test the waters. It's a little bit more of an MVP than you think it is. So I thought this was a really interesting thing to touch on because we also think that China is going to follow Hong Kong, which means Hong Kong is literally doing some research by having really good marketing, and it might not stick.
Yeah. I think I tend to disagree with that slightly. I have some really good friends that have run quite a few hedge funds in China, big hedge funds like billion plus VC funds, hedge funds, and they're all currently applying for licenses and are meeting with the Hong Kong authorities currently to try to get licenses to launch venture funds, funds of funds, exchanges, all of these different things. I think but it could be very much an insider's game. It might not be any of us can go and apply in Hong Kong. I think it might be, for the time being, incumbents from Asia that have already strong relationships and strong track records over there that they might be allowing. But
well, this is also interesting from a FUD perspective, right? We have this good news, and then of course our American news is like, oh, but be wary of it. When maybe we shouldn't be wary at all. I don't know. I'm not in Hong Kong.
I mean, you have to take it with a grain of salt, of course, right? Like there's some things that happen in different jurisdictions that are different than here, right? And especially in Asia, what we hear about so much in North America is that, there's a lot of corruption in Asia. You can be shut down, or you can be, I don't know, you can be nationalized, or all these things really easily. And yeah, that's probably true. Does that happen to the vast majority of people? I don't think so. But it's something definitely to keep in mind. I think it's just oversold in America.
Where else there's a lot of corruption that we hear about?
America, Canada,
Russia.
Oh.
So this is interesting. I didn't actually make a banner for this, but the reason that Russia is in the news quite a bit right now is because some of their government officials have been accused of taking Bitcoin bribes in fairly high amounts. And so I don't want to spread that FUD. You can go look that up on your own because it's all conjecture. I know it's all conjecture, and I couldn't find any validity in it. But what Russia is actually doing is, we had talked before that they were pro crypto, and then they became very anti-crypto, especially during the war. And then they thought, people can just use a VPN, and they're using crypto anyway, so we should probably onboard ourselves to that instead of trying to prevent it. So their largest bank, Ross Bank, has introduced a pilot program for cross-border payments for crypto. This is not for a CBDC. This is for crypto, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I think this is rather interesting. This is what I think governments and central banks and major banks should be looking at, as opposed to CBDCs, because it keeps it arm's length from your government oversight. Although they still have regulatory structures that they can reach in and get information and have oversight, but your privacy is somewhat protected. I don't know if it's protected in Russia, but I do like this as a structure. I think what is kind of forcing their hand here, again, is the weaponization of the SWIFT system by the US. So yeah, that has, and sanctions and all of these things, regardless of our opinion on Russia's, Russia's involvement in the war in Ukraine, doesn't matter. Of course, I have opinions on that, but we'll save that for another day. This is somewhat reactionary, right? Like they had been anti-crypto for a while, and then all of a sudden their fiat system is somewhat relegated to local or to national. Like they can't go international with their fiat right now. So they've done two major things. They're a big part of BRICS, obviously, which is leading to a different trade kind of relationship between certain countries that excludes the US. And of course, now they're leaning into crypto, which I think is just the easiest and most efficient way for them to allow oligarchs to move money around the world. All of that. Go ahead. Go ahead. No,
the other pressure point is the people. So they had reduced they really limited how you could transact peer-to-peer with crypto. Part of that was because people were worried that they were like funding the Ukraine war, that kind of thing. And so they like had a super lockdown on it. And then they discovered that people are just using a VPN and they're still trading nearly $300 million daily peer-to-peer in Russia. And so they're trying to open that up and make it more of a retail market, which of course then they'll probably want to tax and have some control over. But the first step is to just open up. So kind of interesting to see Russia do that.
Yeah, I read an article that we haven't included in the show today, but I read an article that suggests when you have novel nascent technology like this, regulation and governments have to meet the tech where it is, not the other way around. Not the tech has to meet the government where it was, because that stifles innovation. And so what this strikes me, how this strikes me at least from Russia's perspective, notwithstanding SWIFT and all of the other wartime things that are going on, is they're saying, hey, like this is happening anyways. So instead of trying to force everybody to do something very unique and specific to what our government wants, let's just put in some safeguards so that we get the bare minimum of oversight and control and taxation capacity that we want, but we allow the technology to evolve. And I think hopefully we'll see that in other jurisdictions also. And I don't think this has ever come out of my mouth before, but it sounds like Russia might be leading the way in some senses in terms of,
weird, right?
Encouraging. Hey, Evie's here. What is up? And we've got Rob in the house too on Twitter Spaces. What's up, guys? Thanks for.
To just kind of like wrap up Eurasia, this isn't exactly BRICS, but Hong Kong and Russia are both opening up quite a lot. And we've already seen that Europe is opening up quite a lot. I have just like a For Funsies article here. I don't know. I probably don't have time for a For Funsies article, but I love it. So basically a French sustainable agriculture company is offering on-chain bonds. So they're using Obligate in DeFi, but they're an olive oil company. So I don't know why I think this is so cute. I love the idea of you having this like olive oil bottle with your like little NFT on it. You're like, this is utility.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. I think we have to see people kind of testing these weird edge cases before we see actual adoption at scale of on-chain bond issuance and all of these other things. There's also not really, other than in Europe, existing structures of regulation to actually allow this in a compliant way. There's a lot of restrictions on offering bonds, and there's very few pathways to becoming compliant on chain currently. So this is interesting. I think it'll be really good for case studies. The counter argument, Nicoletta, what's up? Welcome. Thanks for joining. Anyways,
finish your sentence at least.
I got excited because she showed up. We've got some returning guests, some new guests. Nice. It's awesome. So I think what's the counter argument to this is that it's somewhat opportunistic, right? They're saying we're just an olive oil company. We're kind of small. There's a lot of hype in certain areas, especially in Europe with MiCA around, on-chain and DeFi and all of these things. So probably a mix of, there has to be people that are willing to be early adopters and innovators here. This seems like one of those examples, but at the same time, could be slightly opportunistic. Another one.
I also love the idea of DeFi and agriculture, because although olive oil, we might not think of it as agriculture, it's like a luxury good in Canada. Elsewhere in the world, it is a standard agricultural product. And we actually do see quite a lot of rural adoption from blockchain because rural people don't trust the government. Then again,
in Canada, it's all about the seed oils. It's all about the seed oils and the forest fire. Let's go.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think this is interesting. There's a lot of like green energy and carbon credit projects that I really have a hard time wrapping my head around sustainable economic models on some of these projects. But it's really good to see that there's companies thinking this through and testing it out and trying, small pilots. It's amazing.
I think this also helps with kind of some of the FUD that we're getting about the G7. So obviously the G7 isn't Europe, but it does impact the Western world in this sort of way where we're hoping that places like France can test things out for places like America. And so there has been a lot of FUD about the most recent FATF, which is the Financial Action Task Force travel rule, where you're not allowed to send more than 3,000 USD in crypto daily, etc. We've talked about that quite a lot, but we're seeing more and more op-ed pieces come out about how that's going to create a huge rift between centralized exchanges, decentralized exchanges, and traditional banking. And so I like to see weird edge case, like use case scenarios, so that we can see, oh, actually, maybe there isn't the rift that we think there will be.
Oh, garbage man's there. So yeah, this is interesting. I mean, we're seeing we talked about this yesterday. We're seeing a fairly significant outflow from centralized entities that are very quickly globally, not just in the US, but globally starting to find themselves in some regulatory hot water. And so for a lot of reasons, because they're so centralized, it's very easy for them to stop withdrawals and to pause everything and to do, really make it difficult for their users to have access to their funds. So what we're seeing is a movement to DeFi in a lot of ways. And obviously we have a few DeFi protocols, so I'm not opposed to that shift happening. But what I do think will happen is even decentralized platforms, in air quotes, there's only a handful that are actually decentralized meaningfully. And the rest of them are quasi-decentralized. But I think we're all going to find ourselves in some version of regulation. And I mean, so saying that it's going to cause a rift between banks and centralized exchanges relative to DeFi, short term, yep. Medium term, we're all going to have to play by the same rules, I think, pretty soon.
Well,
whatever those rules are.
Maybe LATAM can play by some slightly different rules. We're gonna just fly all the way across the ocean. We're leaving the G7.
Are we on a private jet for this trip? I think so. Yeah. All right.
Leah from Rug Doc is flying us across.
In her jet. Let's do it.
In her jet, because she's so cool. Okay, so Argentina is kind of leading the way right now. So their central bank they're stepping back. We're going to see some of South America is really going for it, and some of them are pulling back. Argentina's central bank was working forward with crypto. They wanted you to be able to pay peer-to-peer. They wanted you to be able to make retail payments, and they've decided that is a really bad idea mobily. Yeah.
And I think the reason that they're saying that, I touched on this in my comments on the initial story about inflation riddled countries. Argentina is one of those countries. We actually have some people that work with us that live in Argentina, and it's pretty ugly. They're really happy to be paid in USD because obviously then that somewhat hedges them against the crazy inflation going on. I mean, I mentioned this before, from Argentina as a government's perspective, this like exposure to cryptocurrency, if they encourage it at a high level, probably magnifies the inflation problem for them, because everybody just starts moving their assets out, selling the Argentinian currency, and that continues to be problematic. So I think this actually kind of makes sense. They're trying to wrap it in like consumer protection and blah blah bullshit.
On that, they actually have a new agreement with the International Monetary Fund. And that's why this is truly happening. And so Argentina is saying, no, we're trying to protect you. We need to protect our nationalism and our fiat. And basically, Argentinians are like, I should move my money out of here before the wild inflation hurts me. So even though it's pretty much like anti-crypto laws right now, they're still seeing a really strong Argentinian community. I wish we were that revolutionary.
Yeah, there's a big community in Argentina for a whole host of reasons. But this is actually a stakeholder that we don't talk a lot about. on the show, and that is the IMF. The IMF stands to lose a lot by opening up global trade and global finance via blockchain. IMF has had somewhat of a monopoly on international loans and debts and fiat transfers between countries and so on. We really don't need the IMF pretty soon. Obviously, we're not there yet. We've got a long ways to go before we don't need the IMF. But everybody's trying to, like Swift. We talked about Swift yesterday. They're all trying to figure out how can they protect their current business model that has allowed them to become global leaders as much as they can, while at the same time trying to figure out, okay, if we don't innovate, we might die. And the IMF, at least up till now, doesn't seem like it's trying to innovate. They're just trying to force restrictions, to force the hand of countries that need them currently, Argentina being one of them. El Salvador, though.
Okay, I don't want to get too far into El Salvador. I think I might publish something on our GFU newsletter instead. But I saw the other day that we're around the anniversary time of when they became the Bitcoin country. That was this season 2 years ago.
Yeah, that was when they said it was a national means of exchange, right?
Yeah, Bitcoin? That's right.
Yeah. So this is kind of interesting. I think El Salvador's leaned in. They lost a buttload of money too. They bought a bunch of Bitcoin like peak prices, so they were licking their wounds a little bit. But I think
now they're mining. They'll make it back.
Yeah, but now they're mining a $1 billion mining facility. I think it's interesting because El Salvador has an opportunity for some relatively cheap energy, a lot of renewables. Obviously, there's a lot of sun. They can do tidal stuff. There's a lot of wind.
It's almost exactly what Bali was talking about. Remember a couple of weeks ago?
Exactly.
They were saying we have all of these natural resources and we can provide geothermal and solar and so on and so forth so that it's not so environmentally impactful, our Bitcoin mining. Anyway, the other reason that this is cool is Volcano Energy with their $1 billion Bitcoin mining operation has a bunch of American backers. That's one way to diversify when you don't trust the SEC.
I mean, Bitcoin mining at scale, if you can get meaningful commitments on energy costs, Bitcoin mining is profitable, obviously. There's a reason that there's these mega mining facilities. NVIDIA is not making it any easier at the moment because they're constantly increasing prices and there's a lot of scarcity because of the AI craze now, machine learning. Everybody needs chips. Everybody needs graphics. Everybody needs incredible amounts of RAM and so on. But the NVIDIA cards, graphics cards are kind of the key, really. Mm-hmm. And so that is a crazy monopoly that we haven't really talked about. It's only been something kind of that's come up recently, how insane the NVIDIA monopoly actually is at the moment, which is really quite exciting for them and maybe not so much for us that have to pay for their products. But anyways, I think this is definitely interesting. It's interesting to see that certain countries are just leaning into this, especially now that there's so many ways to do it without dirty energy in air quotes.
Okay, I want to fly to one final continent before we have to go today. We're going to fly all the way south. We're going to go to Oceania. JD and I were arguing about this yesterday. This is a joke. We're not actually idiots. So we have two really different things going on. One is that Australia is continuing to explore their CBDC and is like really pushing this forward and has a new digital assets bill. And like they're going for it. They're starting to integrate their banks. They're saying distributed ledger is the future. And meanwhile, Bali, also in Oceania, is saying heck no crypto.
Yeah, before we move on to Bali, Australia they're kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth. Yeah. In the sense that they're unbanking a lot of crypto users and crypto platforms. They're making the connections. They removed a whole bunch of the equivalent of ACH transfers in America, but they've removed a lot of that as options in Australia. So on one hand, they're saying, distributed ledger technology is amazing. We're going to try to find ways to foster innovation, et cetera, et cetera. But in the meantime, we don't want to kill the banking sector, so you guys can't actually transfer your money out of the banks into these exchanges. Or if you do, it's significantly limited and delayed and all this other crap. Arguments could be made that it's delayed to save people from poor, rushed decisions. But again, then the argument is is it Big Brother? Do we need the government to hold our hand and keep us out of trouble? I think in some ways, yes, but at some point it becomes a nanny state. Debanking or unbanking of crypto users and crypto platforms is a systemic problem globally because, again, the incumbent banks don't want to lose their market share. So instead, my recommendation for all the big banks that are listening, because I know they all listen to us,
They do.
is innovate. Like, stop being so protectionist of an antiquated system. Innovate and participate, be supportive, and you will make tons of money. You will have a lot of land that you can grab if you're an existing incumbent or institution. If you just start to embrace technological advancement. That's my
okay. I need to tell you about Bali. I know you want to go, but I have to tell you about Bali. So Bali is a huge crypto hub. They have wild crypto parties. There are crypto meetups. There are crypto co-working spaces. Some people even call them Silicon Bali, which is hilarious. But the governor of Bali has decided no more crypto. So if you are a tourist and you've been paying your cab driver or your cafe or anything like that with your mobile crypto, you now could be put in jail for up to a year, fined up to, I think, 200 million rupiah, and then deported,
which is like
and face additional. Don't be mean. And then face additional penalties. This is a really big deal because a lot of the Indonesian peoples have become banked and have found their own financial autonomy via crypto. And so you can actually go right now to a cafe and like buy your coffee with Bitcoin, for example, just using your mobile payment. And this is super common. And they're saying, heck no, no more, use our fiat system or don't visit us. And they mean it. So they actually busted a car rental owner within the last week for accepting crypto payments and like threw him in jail.
Yeah, obviously I struggle with this one as a general rule, just because I think it's very short-sighted on behalf of the government. Instead of just outright banning something that clearly the majority of the electorate actually cares about, especially in Bali. One of our team members actually lives in Bali part-time, or seems to live there part-time, and so it's really engaged in the community, and it's vibrant. There's a lot of very intelligent crypto participants, builders, projects, investors. There's a lot of people in Bali that really are into blockchain and cryptocurrency, which is exciting.
Absolutely.
It's just unfortunate.
My question is always, is it worth it? Like, they had a whole undercover contingent to like break through this. They joined Telegram groups about crypto so they could uncover this car rental agency so that a tourist can't pay in Bitcoin or whatever for their 5-day car rental. Like, I don't know that that's the biggest issue that Bali police should have.
I really just don't think that the economy of Bali hinges on whether tourists use cryptocurrency. I think they really need to get their house in order in other ways, and then maybe start worrying about this.
And also to come forward and say, hey, we're super pro crypto. We actually want to do Bitcoin mining. Look at our natural resources. We sent our governor to Bitcoin Miami. Don't spend it here, though.
Yeah, let's actually increase GDP by embracing this technology as opposed to completely stifling growth, stifling investment. Anyways.
All right. That's your tour around the world today.
Okay. For anybody listening, Raul's here too. Hey, Raul, what's going on? Thank you all for joining. If you're listening on Twitter Spaces, there will be a recording. Please share and bookmark that recording, like it, do all those things if you don't mind. It only takes a second, but really helps us get the reach out. We're here every day, Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern.
We never go home.
Every week. We never go home. We do this on all these venues. Help us spread the love. Help us work with as many people as we possibly can. Again, we're not advertising. We don't get paid for any of this stuff. This is just really a service to see, how we can help people dispel some FOMO, dispel some FUD, and make objective decisions.
JD.
With that, Kiara,
go find yourself.